go ahead and roll.
All right,
Straight
go ahead.
this and stand by. Excuse me, Howard Packett, take one.
Where's the makeup artist?
You look great. You don't need a makeup artist. How'd you get into this anyway, Howard?
How'd I get
the whole
into it?
advertising business?
Advertisement through the newspaper. I worked on a newspaper, and with Cecil Edmonds, we worked on from Bill Brill, a bunch of us worked on a newspaper, and so I and Cecil left the newspaper and joined Cabell Brand. That was that time Brand, Stevens, and Vraden. Peter Vraden was the creative director, and so he was there about a year or so. And so Cecil and I remained friends, and one day he said, would you like a job writing copy for Stuart McGuire in those days? And I said, well, yeah, if it pays more money, I'll take it. And so I went over there, and the two of us were in the back end of the Stuart McGuire warehouse, had an office back there, primarily doing copy for the catalog, shoe catalog, and ads and things, And then so we were sitting around a lot of time, kind of off season, we said, why don't we do something else, So we started an advertising agency and called it, I think Brand Edmonds, had several names, but it ended up as Brand Edmonds, just Brand Edmonds. And so we kind of grew from there. And when we split it, when we went to Richmond, can't remember when, we opened an office in Richmond, and we called that Brand Edmonds Bolio, because we had hired a guy in Richmond who was with First and Merchants Bank, who people knew him pretty well. And so we gave him that name in that office, and when we did, we kind of put Packett on this one, so kind of split them up, Brand Edmonds Packett, Brand Edmonds Bolio, Mm-hmm. So it worked out pretty good.
I think Dale was telling me about working for Brand Edmonds Bolio the
Yeah.
other day.
Yeah, in Richmond.
Yeah. Were you now? When did this happen? When did you actually?
I don't know. It may be something in that article there, but I'm saying that in the 60s, I worked on a newspaper, and I came to the newspaper in '58 and worked for about 4 years. So I'd say early '60s is when I went with the agents, and we kind of started doing agency kind of things, And I really can't. I remember probably the first account we had outside was Roanoke Memorial Hospital. Somehow I'd gotten to know some of the people at Roanoke Memorial through social or something, and I got a call one day from Ham Flanagan's office, Doris Carper, who was his secretary, and said, "Mr. Flanagan, I want to see you," So I go over there, and they'd never, I don't think a hospital anywhere had ever done the advertising. And he said, "I want to do some advertising." I said, "For what?" He said, "I want people to know that we're doing things, So we ran a newspaper ad, and he liked it, and it kind of grew from there. So we ended up, my association with Roanoke Memorial all these years has been the outgrowth of that, And Nancy Agee, I remember Nancy, who's head of Korean now, she was in nursing school over there, and we were doing brochures and things, and Nancy was our model for the covers of our nursing brochures and things. So we've known each other a long time. So that's kind of how we got started thing. And then we really grew in the mail order business too. We had Stark Brothers Nurseries in Louisiana, Missouri. We handled some direct, we started a company for Johnson products, floor products, wax products, called Elsa Maxwell. When people quit polishing floors, and Mr. Johnson called us, and he knew us through Cabell, really, through all the direct marketing stuff. And he asked us to come. He wanted to find something else for women to do besides wax floors. That's why he put. So we came up with handicraft thing, needlepoint and stuff I think it was called Elsa Maxwell, and that worked really well for a while, But like anything else, it kind of went away, So we handled a lot of direct marketing things, mail order kind of stuff. And then we started picking up banks. This market here this town had 5 or 6 banks, and every agent had a bank of some kind, And then they started all merging, and we got into the merger thing. We got, one of the big first accounts we had was we introduced Bank AmeriCard to Virginia. And what we did, I think it was us, it was Dominion Bank, First and Merchants Bank, and maybe a bank in Norfolk. They all got together to introduce Bank AmeriCard to Virginia and hired us to do it. So Warner Allhouse was marketing down at Dominion, So we all went out to California and made a pitch out there and got the account. And so we ended up with some pretty good size accounts. We had national accounts and just Bassett Furniture. Can't name them all, but lots of them, And it kept us busy.
You did chapstick for a while, didn't you?
chapstick. Had chapstick. It's a strange thing. When we had chapstick, they were in Lynchburg. Their manufacturing was in Lynchburg, and we were over there one day going through their plant, and looking at the vats and things, and they were talking about doing. I said, do you guys ever think about putting maybe a taste of something in there, like grape or something in the chapstick? And they looked at me like I was crazy, And I know it was a year later or 2 years later they introduced chapstick. I never got any credit for it, but I just thought of it when I saw it. Maybe put some strawberry or something in it. And they do that today, I guess. I don't know, But those are the kind of things, I was never. I was always an account type person, but I was always, I really knew creative talent when I saw it, So I think one of the things I've done well is hire the right kind of creative people, because and that's the key to this business. If you don't have good copywriters, you don't have good advertising, as you know, and creative people.
Oh, I think that's been one of the how do you think you've done this for? I mean, years. You're still involved here. Certainly, I was talking to Todd, and he said, we still consider, Howard is the way that he does it is part of the way we do things, the way that he taught us, the way he brought us up. How do you think this agency? I always say I keep humble because it's really easy to look at the bones of all the ones who've been here before me. The Brett Morey was great.
Oh yeah.
There's always 3 hot agencies, and 2 of them are out of business in 5 years.
That's right.
What do you think the secret of you staying relevant and excited for so long has been?
I don't know. I just think, my background is journalism and marketing, but I also write pretty good, And I just, like I said, I think just putting the right people together. I mean, we have some great talent in this market, but keeping them together was my primary function, And then finding new talent. When some of them strayed off and got a job in New York, I would look for. So I think I did a pretty good job of hiring account executives who were good and creative people who I love, and just finding people like that, And it kind of all worked together. And then we kind of had we had the best Christmas parties in the world. We were more family than anything else. We really were. If anything happened to anybody, then we all took care of it, So we were family, and the Packett group was always that kind of way, I mean, the best thing I did was let everybody off on Friday afternoons in the summertime, So things like that, and it's just the way we did things, I think.
How do you think that you were talking about how every business, every agency? I think it was easier to have an agency a few years ago, because you're right.
Oh yeah.
Every agency had a bank.
Yeah.
Every agency had a car dealer, because car
That's
dealers
right.
they didn't go to these national.
That's
ones.
right.
You had everyone had a bank, a car dealer, and most of them had a hospital, because you had Louis
That's
Gill,
right.
you had Roanoke Memorial, you had Gill Memorial,
Yeah.
you had.
We did them all. Everybody did, and everybody, we all. And the thing about the Roanoke market is, Richmond's kind of cutthroat, but Roanoke market is we were always buddies, When I had my parties, I invited all the other agencies, So we were all knew each other, and a lot of them. Dale worked for us, and maybe some of the others. Claire worked as a copywriter for us, so some of them came out of the old Brand Edmonds group, kind of grew out of that.
First interview I ever had in Roanoke was with Brand Edmonds Packett. Phil Renfro interviewed me.
Phil Renfro.
And I learned something very important shortly after that, because Phil Renfro interviewed me for my first job, and within a year he was doing freelance for me at Associated. So I said, you better be nice to people.
That's right. You got to be nice to people.
The worm turns right fast.
It does turn fast, I'll tell you. We've always tried to be kind to people. I remember, but I had my kind of mean side too. We pitched a big furniture account one time in Martinsville, and it was the biggest dog and pony show. Trying to get, they were spending some money in those days. Furniture companies were, And I had lost my hair, had alopecia, it all came in. I had lost my hair, and we ended up the pitch, and the president of the company was sitting in on a presentation and said, let me ask you a question before we discuss this. And I said, what's that? He said, do you shave your head? And I said, well, no, I don't, because I have a disease that just happened all of a sudden, And he said, well, I wanted to know, because if you do, we would never hire you. And I said, you know what? I don't want your account. You know? I mean, he pissed me off right there on the spot, and I didn't care, you know. I mean, I felt that much about the business, you know, because it's a great business, best business in the world as far as I'm concerned.
The tell me about that. We all have our just miss. Tell me about your pitch to Virginia tourism and what happened with that. Tell me about that whole what led up to it, and then what did you find and how did that work?
Every 4 years, Virginia Tourism Account. That's one reason we moved to Richmond, because we were told you really need to be in Richmond. You know, Halk had that early on. Halk had all the Virginia tourism stuff, even placed all their classified ads and stuff. And Lorraine Allman, who worked with us, did all that, you know. But so we pitched it every year. And back in those days, television wasn't something you do. We used mostly print stuff, you know, some print, a lot of print. And so we decided that we would go and find some personalities that had been in Virginia. So we went to the Barter Theater and found that I think it was Gregory Peck, Patricia Neal, and Ernest Borgnine had all been down there. So we went out to California and interviewed them. Ralph Kruger and our Richmond office interviewed them all, you know. And they had some great lines, and we were going to put them in radio, put tourism in radio. We did 72 ads, and we did like 6 or 8 radio spots using them, you know. And we thought we had it. I mean, we went in with the biggest dog and pony show you ever saw in your life. And when it was all over, you know, a week or two later, they called and said, we've given it to Martin and Waltz. Well, we found out later that there was a girl named Debbie Shelton, who was Miss Virginia, I think. I may be wrong about that. But that's when they introduced Virginia's for Lovers. And the way they did it was they brought Debbie Shelton in with a T-shirt on that had Virginia's for Lovers on the front of it. And we think that's how they got the account. I always told George, and I said, I think that's how you got the account. But I mean, we eventually took some of that creative we had, and we got the City of Virginia Beach travel account kind of out of that, you know. And I used to handle that account from here. I'd get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and drive to Virginia Beach, because in those days, you know, you didn't do ads the way you do them now. You did them on hard boards, and you layouts for brochures, and then you put them in your car and you drove 4 hours to the client, and if he changed 3 things, you drove back and changed them. That's the way it was, you know. So we decided we had to have a travel account. We got Virginia Beach, and that budget wasn't but $30,000 or something in those days. And so the guy who was in charge of it said, well, you know, to celebrate the fact that we're giving you this account, you guys got to have a party. So I think it was a Hilton down at the end. We went down to the Hilton and had this party. And I think the total budget was $30-some thousand, and we spent $8,000 on the party that took care of our budget, you know. But we got the account and did some good stuff for them, yeah. But that's, you know, that's the way business was.
Yeah, Webster was telling me about Ad Day, because they had Dominion at the time.
Yeah.
And you had to send out these little ads to every little thing, and he said you literally for 2 days you're the president of the agency. Well, you're shipping ads.
Yeah.
You have to put them, you know, everything, or tape day.
Yeah.
You had to send the tapes to
Tape day. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, Bill Kelly in Salem used to set type, and at a little off there near the highway department in Salem, and he set all of our type. He was across the street from Stuart McGuire, and there was tons of type in those days. But when we got over here, we kept using Kelly. But I mean, I'm kidding you, back in those days, you'd do an ad, you know, and if somebody didn't like something or wanted to change something, you had to redo it and send it. We had a courier service and made them rich going back and forth, taking hard prints back to things, you know. Nowadays, you do it just like that.
Should I?
Yeah.
Scoot over a little bit so Howard's not looking so far
Oh,
off.
okay. Yeah.
You're fine where you are.
Okay.
Yeah. We actually, you know, and I'm sure you guys did too for a while. We employed a courier.
Yeah.
You know, we had a full timer. That's all she did was deliver stuff and wrap stuff.
Yeah.
I think Webster had found her through a buddy. She was not a really good, talented courier. It was not her career move.
Well, we had Randy Jones, who was Randy, and another guy named, I can't remember his name now, but I still stay in touch with him. Still use him once in a while.
Were you around when? I know it was after his big days, but Were you around when Otto Whitaker
Yeah.
came?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about him.
Otto worked for Leo Burnett, and he worked. Let's see, did he work for Norfolk and Southern? I know he did a piece for he did that, in fact, in the last couple of weeks, at 4th of July. Did you see the thing that he did years
Yeah,
ago?
and actually, I think he was a writer for Howell
He did
for
that.
a while.
He was with Houck, that's right. And
Let's
handled,
start that again, because I talked over you.
yeah, and handled Norfolk and Southern, I think, and did that when he was with Houck. And then he went to Leo Burnett, and Cabell ran into him when he was in Chicago dealing with somebody consultant we used up there on colors and things, and so Cabell and Cecil and I went to Chicago, and I met Leo Burnett. You know, he'd had this thing, a big bowl of apples, and every time you come in, they'd hand you an apple. You know, so I got to meet Leo Burnett, and that's where Otto came back here and worked for us for a while. And when he did, that's when he changed rewrote part of that Ode to a Nation or whatever he called it. You know, yeah, he worked for us for maybe 2 years or so. Before he retired. He was a great copywriter, really was.
Yeah, I've been talking to his son, who's still around here and there. Interesting guy. It's one of those little stories, but it's a big story.
Mm-hmm.
The Lion, the Nation. The fact that it was, it's not even considered an ad. It's prose now. It's patriotic prose.
But that's what he did it for tonight. It's been around a long time, though. God.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was written as an ad.
That's right. It was.
And it's very, 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 very similar.
Yeah.
Who did you meet? Who in this business did you meet that you found particularly admirable?
In this business, it's not so much me, but I think Cecil, my old partner, is probably the most creative person that I've ever known. I mean, he was really good, because Cecil he's an account executive or a creative person. He'd go to a client. He handled a couple of clients down in Tennessee, and he'd go down, and the guy would tell him what he wanted. On the way back, Cecil would take a legal pad and write the copy and the headlines and doodle out the layout. And by the time he got back to the office, he had it, and it was good. It was that kind of. Ron Seacrest, who worked for us for a while, who went on, I think, to the Atlanta Art Institute. I may have that wrong, but he was one of the best that came through here in a long time. He was really good. And I remember some of his work. We handled the old Farmers National Bank in those days, and that's when the small banks were being kind of taken over by the bigger banks were coming in, and they wanted a campaign called independent banking, And so I came back and told Ron one day, I said, we got to do something fast, because they always wanted something tomorrow, I still like that, but back in those days, they wanted it in the paper this Sunday, So Ron just sat in his office and doodled around, came back about 10 minutes later and gave me a whole campaign. It was called We're Not One of the Bunch. And he had a bunch of bananas, a bunch of grapes, and the headline simply said, We're Not One of the Bunch, with a great photograph of the fruit, which I thought was pretty good. I remembered it, But yeah, Ron probably. We had some great copywriters that come through, but I can't remember all of them now. But they went on to New York and all over the place.
Any
One
change?
slight adjustment.
I would not. I would be hard pressed to have a better top to bottom team than you had when you had Robin, Sandy, Sean,
Oh, yeah.
Lane Ford, and Dawn.
Lane Ford, I forgot about Lane. And Dawn was good.
Yeah.
We had some great people. I mean, really did. And Cecil, I hired Sandy. I'll never forget when I hired Sandy. She was Virginia Western. And I don't know how she ended up down here, but I guess she just came down, and she called me and wanted to invite. And I remember Roanoke Country Club in those days, and I said, well, I'll take you to lunch at Roanoke Country Club, So, and it's kind of a staid place, and Sandy shows up with a pair of overalls, cut off overalls or something like that, But from the day I met her, I knew she was good, She was, and Tony, I interviewed Tony when he first came to town. I could see his talent was right there, And John Griesmeyer, hired John. John's a great copywriter. So I think one of my strengths is I was able to spot talent like that, I don't know why, but I guess, had a little creative in me to start with, I guess.
I think one of the most important things I do is when you find somebody who can help you sell them why you're the good place to be.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Well, like Trina, who works for you, Trina was right out of, high school, I guess, when she came. But I could tell right away that Trina had a great talent, I mean, she was good at anything. She really can do anything. And we know back in those days, we were getting into computers and things, and if one broke down, Trina would pull out her toolkit and fix it, She's that kind of person, and do anything in the world for you. And we had people like that through the whole organization, And they stayed a long time. A lot of them stayed a long time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine how many. When Sandy was youngish,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard stories about when people would come in and judge the Addies, as soon as they were over, they would flip over the boards to see who did the work. And it was always Sandy's work.
Yeah.
And how you held on to
I don't know how she I think she kind of, when she got married to Sean, and they stayed here in town, and they kind of liked it, and she liked this area, But she could have gone anywhere she wanted to, I think. And that's true of a lot of people we had.
That's actually a question for talent level, on a consistency basis over your career, how do you think Roanoke's talent stacks up against other cities our size, bigger cities?
I think I've dealt a lot with the Richmond agencies and Norfolk agencies. I don't think our talent's as good as anybody's, We've had, I think the Martin agency, where they were getting in their early formative years, hired Tom Lehman and 2 or 3 others, I can't remember who, from us. And Tom went on to be, kind of head man down there, creative director, under Howard Jacobs, But, we've had great talent here in this town, and I still have some great talent here.
What's the biggest challenge you have doing business in Roanoke?
In Roanoke, Roanoke is the worst place in the world for an advertising agency. I always said that, because there's no consumer product to sell. Advance comes closer than anybody. When you think of it, when all the banks merged, and there's nothing, unfortunately, there's not any big consumer type account, And like you said, Grand Piano, we handled them for a while, but they use a Chicago specializing in furniture advertising now. I think car dealers are all using somebody package stuff, just stick something in the hole. And that's what's happened to that business. So it's still, I don't know how you guys exist sometimes. I really don't. It's become, how the ads have changed, I mean, it's just, and social media. I don't know enough about social media to see whether it's working or not, But it's just, somehow we all managed to do it and put out a really good product. And of course, we brought in the whole tech community, a lot of talented people up there, Radford, the college thing. So that brings a lot of new talent into the market, I think.
What did you always like about advertising?
I like it because it's something different every day, always. And I didn't like crises, But I like it because there wasn't a sameness to it. It's sort of like a newspaper. And I came out of the newspaper business, and every day was different, And that's what I liked about advertising. It's just something different about it. And dealing with different people. I've dealt with every kind of person you can imagine in your life, and I kind of like people. And so I don't like everybody, but I don't tell them that. But I mean, I've been able to get along with people pretty good, I think,
What was the caliber and the spirit of the competition like?
It was good. We never had a lot of animosity among the agencies at all. We all, like I said, we'd all party together, and then we'd go out and compete for the same account, And I think probably a lot of that now. I don't know. I don't keep up with it the way I used to. I just think I don't think that Roanoke is unique to that. I don't believe, I mean, I had job offers in New York and different places. I couldn't do it because I had 2 children and couldn't move to New York, But there's been a lot of people who worked in this market who have gone on to pretty good things.
What do you think the role of the local advertising agency? What do you think the role is? How do we make a community better if we do our job? What is our job?
Well, as you know, and one of the things that we did over the year was spend tons of time and money on helping community projects. I mean, you all are involved in a lot of them. We are. So we've got a lot of our time into helping organizations that don't have any money to do things with, like CHIP, Early on, CHIP, well, they still don't. But a lot of those organizations I've seen grow from nothing to something, and it primarily because of the advertising business around here that helped them do it. Really have.
What local ads or efforts or ad campaigns that either you worked on or your competitors worked on, do you remember particularly as being something that you said, "Oh, that's pretty good," or "Oh, I wish I'd done that," or over the years?
Oh God, I don't know. It's hard to say. Just so much good stuff in the addies. When you used to go to them, I don't go to addies anymore. But the whole. If I had to remember one campaign that somebody else did, another agency, I don't know. I really don't. I don't know what the best campaign we ever did was. I remember certain little things, but I don't remember the world beaters, And there were a lot of them out there. I just don't remember them,
People always tell me about this, about a Colonial National Bank ad that they did when they were building the building, and that Jerry Conrad had taken pictures of it on up, and how great that turned out. Which actually the production quality, I have some Binge of Autumn's old reels from the early 70s. The production quality is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
For some of the stuff.
Well, we did a campaign for First Emergency in Richmond one time, and used Secretariat, the horse, after he won the Kentucky Derby, because Mrs. Tweedy was on the board at First Emergency, and that was some of the best looking footage I've ever seen, and it was a great spot. When we did Bank of America, I remember this. We tried to keep it very simple, and we just got a big egg and just wrote nest egg on it and painted the Bank of America logo on the egg and just put nest egg under it, and I thought that turned out pretty good. I remember that. And then we did it for Bank of America also at one time. I think we were talking about that. They wanted a fall back to school campaign, and had to start in the fall, so they had to do it in the summertime. We were doing it down in Richmond, and we went out in the country. They have a school bus and all this kind of stuff, and we needed the trees to look like fall, and we tried to paint them. And when we did this, paint got away on a guy's house next door, and we had to paint his house, with things like that. It's been some really good stuff that's come out of this market, really has.
Yeah, almost. I remember John, Will, and Freddie talking about when they were young. They did a thing where they had helicopters flying over, almost like the WKRP turkeys.
Yeah.
They had helicopters flying over and dropping Easter eggs, and they hadn't anticipated the wind. And they were supposed to drop them in a park, but they blew all over a neighborhood. People were traipsing through and
I had a million stories like that, I'm sure. It's just that's the kind of business it was. I mean, you got creative people. Anything can happen, and that's what the business is all about.
How have you? How do you think a community our size is enriched by having a good, strong group of creative thinkers who are not just involved in the advertising, but the stuff you've done has been amazing. The stuff Cabell Brand has done has been life-altering. Without John Will Creasy, you could certainly make an argument that there wouldn't have been a National D-Day Memorial, because he was always behind the scenes in there, or a center in the square, or a festival in the park. And even John, stepped up when they needed the Hotel Roanoke.
That's right.
That put over top. What are some of the ways that a community like ours benefits just from having good, solid, involved thinkers?
I think to have the creative talent in this market, be willing to step up to the plate and do things for them. Because like you're talking about, all those projects, needed help, and they didn't have the money to do it with, So the people stepped up in the advertising and public relations community and said, I'll volunteer my time, I've seen so many of them, I was on all these boards at one time, and the reason I was there because they knew I had an advertising agency and they get some free creative time, and that's, I wasn't that popular. I knew what they wanted, but I was glad to help them, And so, and I've even helped Council Community Services. They used to be in the basement over here of the Carlton Terrace, I think, and nothing to do with advertising, but I told Wayne Strickland, this is Raw, I can't remember his name, but he ran Council Community. I said, you guys ought to have a building somewhere. You're paying rent over here. So I helped him get the building on whatever it is, on where you are on Patterson. And I did the same thing with Wayne Strickland over at the 5th PDC. Got him into a building. He used to be in the Ponce de Leon. So it wasn't just the advertising part of it. It was just helping all these people. And I think a lot of people in advertising kind of see things that some people don't see, you know, think around the curve. And I think that helps things like a Hotel Roanoke and things like that.
Juliet, if I missed anything, I think you've done great, Howard.
Yeah, I think you have too.
Hmm?
I can't think of anything.
Well, you know, I talk a lot, but I would really, you know, I've enjoyed the business so much that it's my life, you know.
Yeah. What's it like to be? I mean, you're still working.
Yeah.
What's it like to be working and not doing advertising?
Well, you know, I'm up at South Peak, and I still get dabbled in. You know, we've got Cindy Haynes and Jim Cates helping with some creative and media, and some other people doing some stuff. I got involved in that. I don't, on a day-to-day basis, I don't get involved. I just, you know, I retired from the agency, and I didn't do anything. I played, you know, golf and rode my bicycle and did all those things. Got tired of that. And so though about 10 years ago, I went up and helped Jim Smith, and I've been buddies for years at Smith, you know, Smith Packett. And I helped him open Pheasant Ridge, and when he got ready to do South Peak, he said, "How about helping us?" So I just sit around and BS my way through, you know, and help them, give them ideas, and I think that worked pretty good. And that's all I do, you know. But at least I can't sit home; I go crazy, you know. And I just can't play golf the rest of your life.
What is everything has changed so much. I mean, even when I started in this business, if you wanted to run a campaign that touched virtually everyone in the Roanoke Valley, you needed to buy 3 radio stations, 2 TV stations, and put an ad in the paper,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd get everybody.
Yeah.
Multiple times generally. Now there's all this, you know, the internet, the viral marketing, street marketing, everything else. Is the power of an original idea is the power of the original idea still the most valuable commodity in advertising?
I think it is. The problem is, like you say, you're delivering the message, you know. You don't see many great ads in the newspaper anymore. I mean, newspaper advertising for institutional stuff, you don't see anymore. You know, you see retail stuff, but newspapers have really suffered because you don't see full-page ads for banks anymore. You may see one, but it's when a bank changes its name or does its logo or something. But, you know, and television. I remember Security National Bank came to town. We helped start that years ago, a guy named Walter McAllister. And banking in those days, Ed Old kind of ran First National Exchange and all the other banks in town too. But so we got, you know, Cecil said, we're going to put Walter McAllister on television. Well, no bank president had ever been on television, you know, so we put him on television. And Cecil gets a call from Ed Old, and he said, "Cecil, this is below the dignity of banks to put the president on television." I'll never forget it. So that's the changes, you know. But it's just the whole media mix has changed, and I've tried to keep up with media, you know, but I don't know if somebody hired me tomorrow to run a company, I'm not sure I know where to put the media dollars, you know. It depends on what they want to do, you know. But it's a whole different mix these days to get to people.
What do you think if you had to remember, what's the most successful campaign you ever had, and how did you gauge that?
Probably Security National Bank, because they started with nothing. Some guys that started a bank and they didn't have a lot of money to spend, and we really took them to new heights where somebody merged and bought them out in a quick time, you know. So I think, you know, anytime you can be successful like that, I think, is to sell something like that, make it work, and make people, because we had lots of good stuff we did, and I kind of remember that among other things, you know.
Yeah, I just like the times that people say, "Man, you did a good job," or "Man, we did good," and especially, "Wow, we had a great city."
You know, I think our whole association with Roanoke Memorial, though, has probably been the most long-lasting. We started out with that one ad, you know, And then we got into other things. We got into television and all kinds of stuff, you know. And I think that they've maintained that consistency. Even Korea, we went through the name change with Korea. We were involved in that, you know, when they went from Roanoke Memorial to Korea. And we did a lot of the PR and advertising in those days on that. So we kind of helped take them through that. And I think that just maintaining that image that they've done all these years, we probably had a lot to do with that.